Hi everyone, my name is Chris Turnbull. Thank you so much for joining me for this session of the MNCodes Summit. Most of us have been involved in some form of distance or hybrid learning in our school districts during the past 8 months. Coding experiences should still be part of our students' well-rounded education in order to continue building their skills and positive mindset about computer science. If you're not already familiar with it, as an Apple Distinguished Educator, I would like to introduce you to the Get Started with Code curriculum guides available from Apple as part of the Everyone Can Code materials, which can be used in person or asynchronously through whichever learning management system or content management system that you're using. The Apple Everyone Can Code and Develop in Swift curriculum guides are free and available for use with students in grades kindergarten through 12. The curriculum includes unplugged activities that don't require any devices and help make abstract coding and computer science concepts more understandable for students by introducing them through familiar everyday activities. Students also practice coding concepts with apps on their iPad that promote learning through playing a game. The Develop in Swift curriculum teaches students the Swift coding language and how to create apps with Xcode. The Everyone Can Code curriculum guides for the elementary grade levels include the Get Started with Code 1 and 2 teacher guides. These guides help teachers to introduce students to coding through practical connections with the everyday world, making coding and computational thinking less abstract and easier to apply to multiple situations in their lives. The Everyone Can Code middle school curriculum includes the relatively new puzzles student and teacher guides and the recently released Adventures student and teacher guides, which start introducing students to the Swift coding language and utilize the Swift Playgrounds app for practice and reinforcement of coding concepts. At the high school level, the Develop in Swift series includes Explorations, Fundamentals, AP Computer Science Principles, and Data Collections, all of which have student and teacher guides and have students developing apps by using Xcode and Swift coding. You can download all of the student and teacher guides for free from the Apple Bookstore and the Books app on your iPad or Mac computer. You can also read the books in the Books app. For now, let's focus on the Get Started with Code 1 and 2 teacher guides designed for students in the elementary school grade levels of kindergarten through 5th grade. The Get Started with Code 1 teacher guide provides 8 lessons totaling 30 hours of instruction, and the Get Started with Code 2 teacher guide includes 10 lessons or 36 hours of instruction. Both guides present lessons with hands-on exploration of fundamental coding concepts that teach students to start thinking like a coder. The lessons are structured to have students think about coding concepts and computational thinking in everyday context, which helps students to understand the abstract concepts better. Here you can see the fundamental coding concepts covered in each teacher guide. Introducing these concepts early in elementary school helps students to incrementally build their skills and positive mindset about computational thinking skills through repeated coding experiences and opportunities at every grade level. The structure of each lesson in the teacher guides is consistent, beginning with the lesson overview. The lesson overview provides the topic of the lesson, the coding objectives that the students will learn, the approximate amount of time needed to teach each section of the lesson, any materials, devices, or apps needed, and the key coding vocabulary for the lesson. Teachers can create a virtual word wall listing the key vocabulary, definitions, and an image to help students connect the concept to their everyday lives. Digital tools like Padlet and Google Jamboard can be especially helpful for creating an accessible virtual word wall online, since students may not be in the actual classroom where they could see a traditional physical word wall display. Each lesson in the teacher guide is divided into 5 sections: the introduction, activity, practice, reflection, and optional app design activity. In the introduction section, students are introduced to the key coding vocabulary of the lesson and participate in an active hands-on exploration of an everyday activity that illustrates the coding concept in a way that students will understand and remember. Sometimes they will use props, cue cards, keynote files provided by the teacher, or other resources. Some of the hands-on activities that teachers might use with students get them up and moving and include recording the steps of brushing their teeth, playing Class Commander or Simon Says, giving directions to move a command bot around the room, singing and moving to pattern songs, creating secret handshake greetings, or their own dance moves. During the activities section of the lesson, students participate in familiar activities like reading a favorite story or book and thinking about the sequence of the actions in the story, creating a virtual sandwich with a keynote file and writing down the steps for a partner to recreate, or working their way through a keynote maze file and recording the shortest set of directional commands to reach the end of the maze. All of these activities are designed to help students see that coding concepts apply to many areas of their everyday lives. In the practice section of the lesson, students practice the coding concepts by playing through the levels in an app, helping them to put the concepts into action by creating a sequence of moves and jumps, or figuring out how to create loops out of repeated patterns of moves and actions. Students use block-based coding apps like CodeSpark Academy and Tinker to focus on visual-based coding puzzles that can help them to develop problem-solving skills, their persistence, and promote creativity. Block-based coding allows students to simply drag and drop code blocks that represent the more complicated coding language structure. With block-based coding, students can focus on learning coding concepts and learn the coding syntax later. Both CodeSpark Academy and Tinker have a teacher dashboard, which allows the teacher to monitor student progress and performance remotely as they work through the levels in the apps, which is perfect for face-to-face, hybrid, or distance learning situations. You can also have students practice coding concepts with other block-based iPad apps like Daisy the Dinosaur, Lightbot Hour, Scratch Junior, Codable, Scratch, and Hopscotch. During the reflection part of the lesson, students can revisit the digital word wall and, using the actual coding terms, reflect on the activities that they did and the levels that they worked through in the app, as well as brainstorming other real-life activities that are also related to the concept, helping to solidify the student's understanding of the coding concept. Students can submit these reflections in the form of screenshots from the app, turned into multimedia recordings with audio and maybe annotations created with apps on the student's iPad to help make their thinking and learning clear to the teacher. Students can easily airdrop these files to the teacher in the classroom, and content management or learning management apps like Seesaw and Schoology can be used to collect the student reflections during distance learning, helping the teacher to gauge student understanding. The optional app design activity allows students to think about the purpose of apps, what they're created to help with, different types of apps, and the features that apps have. The teacher guides include links to download the interactive keynote files, answer keys for the coding app levels, and stories and images used to introduce the concepts and activities, as well as modification and extension tips and suggestions. Teachers can show the stories and images during video conferences with students and also share the files through the learning management system during distance learning. If you're teaching in a hybrid or regular classroom situation, you can further reinforce the coding concepts and get started with Code 1 and 2 guides with physical robots, such as the Bebot robots, that can be programmed with the buttons on its back. If you have the Dash, Sphero Mini, or Bluebot robots, your students can use the block-based coding apps Blockly, Sphero EDU, or the Bluebot app to program the robots. If you're in a distance learning situation, your students can use the new Dash's Neighborhood to program Dash in an online 3D environment. Wherever your students are learning, in distance, hybrid, or classroom models, the Get Started with Code curriculum can help build their knowledge, skills, problem-solving mindset, and confidence about coding and computational thinking. Thank you for joining me for this session on Get Started with Code wherever you are. If you have any questions, please reach out to me on Twitter @TurnbullChris or on my blog, playlearnteach.blogspot.com. Thanks.